so it's time to get started on the cooking process here. So to make your lives easy, I recommend that you have measuring spoons, measuring cups, bowls, mixing spoons, scales, pots, your oil, your salt, your pepper, all your ingredients as well, all laid out, ready to go, so that everything is easy access and that you're not surprised when I say now it's time to measure with this or measure with that, etc. It helps you with your organisation and feeling like you're in control, and that will obviously be a benefit of you when you're learning a dish. So the first thing that we're going to do today is we're going to need to make the pastel dough, which is for our cheesy filling parcels, because that dough needs to rest for about 30 to 45 minutes or so. Okay, so for the pastel dough, we need to make the dough from scratch, obviously. Now, I'm going to be using a KitchenAid mixer. You do not need to have access to a KitchenAid mixer. This is something you can do in a bowl, with a spoon, with a spatula, with your hands, whatever. I'm just making use of equipment that I have access to. So first thing that we're going to need to do is we're going to need to take our plain flour, nice and fresh, never opened before, only the best quality here, Woolworths Essentials.
Oh.
You're allowed to laugh.
Oh.
Don't worry, my camera woman's allowed to laugh. Alright, if I can actually open this. I'm not very good at opening things up and getting into the hole. So we need to get the fuck in there.
Oh, we're allowed to swear on here?
Yeah. Alright, so that's good enough. That's a cup. So 1 cup.
It's not a very precise cup.
You know what? I'm going to do this with a spoon to fill my cup. I feel like that's probably the easier way to go about this, and that's how a chef would operate. And I need to maintain that illusion. There's more flour on the bench than in the bloody cup. I don't want to be raided by the police right now. They're going to think I'm running a coke lab. Right, get that in. See, even us chefs do shit in messed up ways sometimes. And
in fact, chefs are renowned for
exactly.
taking short.
Chefs are renowned for doing things in weird ways. So this is the half cup. So 3.5 cups of this into your mixing bowl, whether that's a KitchenAid. I mean, if you don't have a bowl, you can do this on the bench. Literally. Put your flour, put your salt, make a well for where the liquid's going to go, and then you can literally do a course in folding.
So if I don't have a KitchenAid, can I just put it in a bowl and massage it together with my hands?
You certainly can.
Right.
In fact, you know, sometimes that's how you get the best flavour, because you're transferring your love into the food.
Your bacteria.
That too. Alright, so my recipe says 2 teaspoons of salt. If you are not somebody who likes a lot of salt, obviously cut that back. You know, it's kind of a preferential thing here. I'm just going to do pinches of salt because that's how a chef rolls. So
do the Italian sprinkle.
I've done 3 pinches of salt. I like salt. What else can I say? And that's it. So now I'm going to bring the mixer down, and we're going to start that on a low speed. And all we're doing right now is we're just combining the flour and the salt together, breaking up any lumps that may be in the flour, and I don't think there will be because it is triple sifted, but it's just a good thing to get used to. Just means as well that you're going to have the flavour evenly around the dough with the salt, etc. Now I'm just going to clean up my cocaine and we'll come back. Alright, so I've now mixed that for a couple of minutes to come all together, and if you come a bit closer, you will see that it looks just like a nice, you know, there's not many visible lumps, etc. It looks quite smooth. So now we're adding a cup of water. So take a cup, find your nearest sink, Fill it up until it's about to come over the top. The bubbles are your decision. Now get it in. Try not to spill as much as I did. Clean up your Niagara Falls if you make one. And then that's the water part done. Okay, so the next part of this is to take one egg and beat the shit out of it. So I'm going to crack it into the bowl, make sure I don't get any shell in there, because that would be extremely shellfish of me.
But if you get shell in there, and I know from experience, wet your finger and the shell will stick to it.
Even better tip, use the eggshell to take the eggshell out.
Alright.
The eggshell sticks to the eggshell.
Okay.
Take your fork, or whisk, or finger if you really want to finger the egg. I, don't recommend that, but if that's all you can do, fantastic. I like to fork the egg.
Mad whisking.
That's lightly beaten. So as you can see, it's not fully smashed. It's partially smashed. We're not going to go to jail for aggravated assault for that one. We're just going to get into a little bit of trouble. Okay, so the next step is to put your 2 tablespoons of oil in. Now, I'm using rice bran oil. Recipe does call for vegetable oil. Rice bran, vegetables, sunflower, canola, rapeseed, any of those would be really good. If you only have access to olive oil, obviously use that, but do try to avoid it because it does have a low temperature and we are going to be deep frying these and there is potential for it to impart a bit of flavour in there. So, I've got me tablespoon, got me oil, pop it in, like so, 1 and
5.
2. Now, don't overdo it because otherwise you might get a call from the Middle East and they might want their oil reserves back. So, okay, so the next part of the recipe calls for 1.5 teaspoons of white wine vinegar. Now, I have white wine vinegar from Pinot Grigio. It was in my
fancy.
Even just white vinegar, plain white vinegar, or worst case scenario, even an apple cider vinegar would probably suffice in this situation. So I've got me 1.5 teaspoon here. Now, those of you who don't have 1.5 teaspoons on your spoon kit,
I think they can math.
Just put 1 teaspoon and half a teaspoon. Alright, so the next step is to add a white spirit.
Ooh.
Not the ghostly type, the alcoholic drinkable type.
Oh good, even better.
Yeah, so the recipe states white rum, vodka, any sort of those white spirits. I have gin, so I'm putting gin in because I quite like gin and I don't like vodka and I don't really like white rum either, which is a 50% alcohol gin, so it's nice and strong. So in we're going to go with 2.5 teaspoons of white spirit.
This is not sponsored, but Locke, if you want to, reach out.
Exactly. Now, where's me half a teaspoon? Yep.
Can you pour one for me while you're there?
Funny. Okay, and that's all in. Okay, so now that all your ingredients are in your bowl, no matter what it is, even if it's the bench, we're going to get it mixing. So I'm going to start slow so that I don't have flour all over the place, because I don't really want to clean that up. Okay? So now that it's mixing, call me DJ Rush. Yep, I'll leave that to the sec. I'm going to get a pot out. I'm going to make a seasoned water. This is for the chicken breast, for the coxinha, which is our other dish that we're doing today. Basically, I just need to get that up to temperature so that we can get the chicken in there, so that we can get the chicken cooking within the seasoned water. So,
summer, spring, autumn. Which season are we doing?
Salt and pepper, actually.
Oh.
Wrong type of season, and wrong type of pot as well, for those who are interested. This one is the one you put water in.
That's not the type I like, sorry.
So,
Fill it up with kitchen water, not toilet water.
Yeah, please. Make sure it's water from a tap, not from the garden hose, not from your toilet, not from your washing machine or your dryer or anything like that. Straight from the kitchen tap. Doesn't have to be filtered, just needs to be consumable by the regular human being. And that's going to go there. To that, I'm going to add some salt, but first off, I'm going to put a little bit more speed into the mixing.
Mix it. How much salt are you putting?
Basically, I want it to be like I've just spent a day at the beach.
Cool.
And I've almost died from
So
taking in so much salt water.
3 fistfuls?
No, not quite. You just want some nicely seasoned water that reminds you of seawater, because you want the flavour to impart into the chicken as quick as possible, because the chicken's only going to be in that water for about half an hour.
Okay.
Alright, now that we've got a lot of the flour mixed in, I'm turning up the speed, and basically we just want to mix that until it becomes a dough. Now, as you can see, there's still a bit of flour going all over the place, but it is starting to come together. So we'll come back to you once that is together, and you'll see what we're looking for. So as you can see, my coxinha water is on, the flame is on, it is doing its thing. We wait for it to come up to temperature, then we'll get the chicken in for that. Okay? Meanwhile, we have the pastel dough. So that's been in the mixer. So because it's been in the mixer, it's going to be a little bit stickier than, say, you guys who have been doing it by hand or with spoons or whatever. Speaking of which, it will take you at least 5 to 7 minutes of good hard fisting and kneading to get it to where you want it to be. Don't be scared to add a little bit of flour if it is sticking to your hands. This is what I'm going to do right now because it is just mildly sticky. I've thrown a little bit of flour on the bench, and I'm just going to work that in to finish it off. Those of you who are using a mixer, whilst it's mixing, feel free to do something constructive. Wash your dishes, have a quickie, whatever.
Gross.
So, basically we're looking for a nice ball. If you need some reference points, look in your pants.
Also, if you're going to do it on the bench like this, make sure you sanitize the bench, alright?
Yeah. Make sure you are working.
Otherwise, you will definitely get a hairy ball.
In which case, get the shaver out and trim. Okay, so now we have a really nice dough. It is pliable. As you
nice
can see,
and smooth.
It's very smooth. I can shape it any way I want, as you can see, with ease. So you take that, give it a slap. Don't forget to always slap the booty.
Wow.
Now, grab one of those tea towels that I mentioned before, and what we're going to do is we're going to sit that off over there. I'm going to put a little bit of flour on the top. I'm going to lift up and put a little bit of flour underneath, just to stop it from sticking to the bench. And I'm literally going to cover it with this tea towel to stop a skin from forming on it.
Again, make sure it's a clean tea towel.
Yes, clean. This is a word you will hear a lot today, clean. That now needs to sit for 20, 30, 45 minutes, depending on the temperature of the area that you're working in. And then it'll be ready to be shaped and filled with cheese to make the pastel.
Yum.
Okay, so now it's time to play with your breasts.
Lovely.
I recommend C or D cup, or 375 grams is what the recipe actually calls for. I'm just going to go for the biggest breast I can see, like most men. So basically I'm going to take the breast. I'm only going to use one of these because this is a 700 gram pack of chicken breasts. I'm going to place the biggest one in our seasoned cooking liquid. So the biggest one here, it's nice and plump and firm, exactly what you want. Pick it up, place gently into liquid. Try not to steam burn yourself like I almost did. And that's it, 30 minutes.
Wash your hands.
Yeah, definitely wash your hands. The last thing you want to do is share salmonella with the rest of your people who you'll be cooking for.
Nope! Alright, so your chicken breast is going to bubble away for about half an hour. That's what it should look like. Bryce should never trust me with a camera.
Okay, so we've been about half an hour now. The pastel dough is ready, but first, make your way over to me. Come here.
That's creepy.
Here.
Very creepy.
So as you can see, the chicken's doing its thing. It's creating bubbles and foam and all things nice. I can't actually see what it's doing, but it is definitely cooking, 100%. So, pastel dough. Let's remove the clean detail, which is now no longer clean for obvious reasons.
Put it in the wash.
And it just goes down there.
Right.
Later.
Oh, that's
right. So as
nice
you can see,
looking dough.
It's a really nice dough. So basically, it's nicely rested. I think it's had a journey to Bora Bora or something.
What about me?
So we'll go down the middle. So you want to halve the dough, or as best as possible as you can to halve. And then, you simply, and you may need to continuously flour it a bit to stop it from sticking, but you want to roll it out. Now, I've got a rolling pin. If you don't have a rolling pin, use a tin of chickpeas or tomatoes or whatever. If you don't have that, use a clean glass, use a plastic glass, use a wine bottle, a beer bottle. Anything that is circular that will enable you to roll something out. If you don't have anything at all, God gave you two hands. You're going for as flat as you possibly can without getting holes in it. If you only have your hands, sure, your dough is going to be a little bit thicker than the rest of this. Might take a little bit longer to cook, but guess what? It's still going to be fucking delicious. So don't stress too much about that. Alright, so I'm just going to lightly flour both sides of this before I go...
It's actually a really nice, smooth looking dough.
Yeah. I'm quite happy with it, I must say. So, both sides, massage it in so it's nice, and then we're literally just going to roll. It doesn't have to be any particular shape. If it does stick to your rolling pin, flip it over. If it's sticking on both sides, a bit more flour. Just be very, very, very gentle with the amount of flour you use, because obviously you don't want to over-flour it, because that'll create a tough dough, and then everybody will cry. So just keep on rolling. What? Keep rolling.
Can you tell he used to be a pizza chef?
No. It wasn't obvious at all.
Your dough looks like Australia, but flat, without
Tasmania. Tasmania. Fuck Tasmania. So, just keep working it. As you can see, we're getting to a nice, just this corner is a bit thick, and although we like them thick, especially with 3 C's.
Oh my god, looks like a car now.
This end a little bit more.
Is it meant to be any particular shape?
No, it is not meant to, because we're going to use a cookie cutter or a knife, if you've only got that, or whatever, to cut the shapes out.
Gotcha.
So now, as you can see, we're basically where we want to be. We may need to roll it out a little bit more, but I'm pretty happy with that. Okay, so for the pastel, now we're all rolled out. I've chosen my cookie cutter. I don't have cookie cutters available here at home. I've left them at work. So this is how I'm going to make my dough. Feel free, again, when cutting, whatever you have access to, mugs, glasses, bowls like this one, etc. Anything that will give you a circular shape. If you don't even have access to that, a knife, and just cut nice rectangular pieces, and yours will be a slightly different shape, but they'll still taste the same, and you'll still be able to achieve what we're trying to achieve today. Okay, come over this way to the stove top. So I've shifted the chicken to the back burner, which is a slightly less powerful burner, so I've popped a lid on, okay? Just to make sure that it still maintains a good temperature. Here, I have a pot that has oil in it. Now, I have a deep fryer that I could have got out and I could have put the oil in there. But I figured most people who are watching this probably don't have access to a deep fryer. So literally, I've taken this pan, I've half filled it with rice bran oil. Use any high temperature oil. Please try to avoid using olive oil. And basically you're going to heat it to a point where it's not smoking, but when you put something in there you get a nice sizzle.
Oh, do you know a good tip for that? Put the end of a wooden spoon in, and when it rapidly bubbles, it's ready to go.
There you go. So you just dip the end of your wooden spoon in, or if you don't have access to that, a piece of flour, some salt, whatever, you're good to go. So that's heating. I will obviously drop the temperature on that once we get up, but I'm just trying to bring it up right now. So, back over here, I'm going to take my awesome chef quality cookie cutter, and basically all we're going to do is that.
So we've got some circles.
That's it. That's all you want to do is you want to make circles, and then you roll your dough up and you roll it out again, and you just go and go and go and go and go until you have all your circles. Now, I highly recommend flouring your circles as you go, so that you don't have them stick to the bench, you don't have them stick to each other. Then, once you have all your circles rolled out, we'll go through the filling process. Okay, so as you can see, we now have our circular pieces of pastel dough rolled out. Now, I have some leftover dough. We've already rolled this out and put the circle shapes and all that out of it 2 or 3 times. It's starting to get a bit stiff. So the best piece of information I can give you when you get to this point and it feels like it's really hard to roll out, put all your leftover pieces together, cling film it, let it rest in your fridge. If you're not going to use it straight away, put it in your freezer for another time. Or, if you've got time on your side, just put it off to the side and let it rest and relax again, because every time you scrunch it up, roll it out, scrunch it up, roll it out, etc., you're activating the gluten in the dough more and more and more, and it's going to get tougher and tougher and tougher, so you need to let it rest. So feel free to do it all, but I am saying there is an option if you would like to continue at a later point, and you can put any sort of filling in these as well that you desire. Today we're doing cheese because it's the traditional thing. You can put mint, you can put veggies, you can put anything that your heart desires in there, and if you do have leftover dough, that enables you, I don't know, in a future dinner or whatever, to go, oh yeah, I've got that dough and I've got some mince, you know, and you put some mince in there and you do some little deep fried mincy things. Anyway, if you'd like to come this way, so as I spoke about before, we have the oil. I also have a plate with paper towel, this is for draining, and I have a slotted spoon. If you don't have a slotted spoon, tongs. If you don't have tongs, a spoon. Anything that stops you from actually having to put your hand in the oil, because obviously
Do not do that.
Is super, super hot. We're talking nearly 200 degrees Celsius here. So as you can see, if you come closer, I will pop the end of this spoon in there, and see how it starts to foam and bubble? That means my oil is ready for cooking it. So now what we'll do is we'll come over here and we'll make some doughs. Okay, so now we have, I'm going to demonstrate 5 of these because otherwise we'll be here for 1100 years whilst I do them all and cook them all for you. So I've got 5 pieces laid out. I've got my cheese. I've got lactose free. I'm a lactard. You know, if you're vegan, feel free to use plant-based. If you want to use normal cheese, go for it. If you don't like cheese, use another filling. Put whatever you like in here. We're just doing cheese because that is the traditional filling. So, basically what I'm going to do is I'm going to take some cheese, I'm going to break it up a little bit, and I'm going to pop it on one side, or as close as possible to one side of the dough. And you do want to put a fair bit, almost to the point where you think, oh yeah, that's a lot, I'm not sure that's going to close. But it will. Then you want to dip your finger in some water and just line the rim of the dough. This is just going to help with the sticking process when you do fold it over. And then you want to make sure that you have no overhanging bits and try and push it all to the center. If for your first few, if you have a little bit less filling whilst you're getting used to the whole technique of folding over, that's fine, because you'll get more and more confident as you go along, and later on your ones will be very full and very cheesy. So, all I'm going to do now is fold that over, stick it down around the edges. The water will help massively with this part, including actually making it stick to my fingers as well. And you just wanted to get it to that point. And then you grab your trusty little forking device and you crimp around the sides until you almost have like a ravioli style looking thing. And then to be doubly sure, and you don't have to do this, but I am doing this, crimp the other side as well. And this will basically guarantee that you don't get a burst. And then all I'll do is I'll make sure my surface is a little bit floured, and that's a little bit floured, because I just don't want it to stick now that it is in such a thin, and that will also help to create an even crispier exterior. And then you just repeat the process. Now, if you do find fiddly things a little bit difficult, you can first put water around the edges. You can choose not to use water at all if you really trust your ability to just crimp using the fork and your fingers. So I will now demonstrate one for you where I do the water around the edge first. Like so. Dry it up. Grab your cheese. Doesn't matter what cheese or whatever you've picked, as long as it's your favourite, as long as it melts. Those are the prerequisites to this dish. Pop it in. Nice pile. Hold it together. Go over on the fold. Remove the pieces that might act as if they're not going to fit. Round the edge, etc. It's all nicely stuck down. Grab the forking device. Crimp it around. You don't have to flip it over. I want to reiterate, you don't have to flip it over and crimp on the other side. That's just my personal preference to make sure that we don't get any bursting during the cooking process. Right, second one. Dust it in a little bit of flour to make sure that it doesn't stick. Right, this next one that I'm going to do, I'm just going to brush the bottom of it in a little bit of flour because it was starting to become a bit sticky on the bench. Just obviously monitor that. If you do notice they're becoming a bit sticky, just any of the flour that's already on the bench, just wipe it through. You won't have any sticking problems anymore. This one I'm going to do without water. So same idea, we just haven't done any edge work, and we will not do any edge work. Like so. A bit more. Then hold the pile, come over the top, stick it down. It will require a little bit more sticking because you haven't used the water to stick. You can use oil, you can use a milk as well with the sticking process. The milk may provide more flavour. That's your call, it's not the traditional way. I'm not even sure this is the traditional way, but what this does is it achieves close to the traditional street food, and that's what we're aiming. And then I'll just dust it in some of the excess flour that's on the bench. Okay, so now it's time to cook these. So I'm just going to cook 3 at the moment, and then I'll go through and I'll do behind the scenes later on. So this is the one that hasn't had any water to hold the edges down. So basically what you want to do is you want to hold it till you get that nice bubbling, and then just gently drop it, being very careful of your fingers obviously. Then we have the 2 watered ones. This is the one that we watered before we put filling in. This is the one that we watered after we put filling in. Is there going to be any difference? Probably not. Put that in. And in. Now my oil is slightly higher temperature, so I've just dropped, and the oil temperature will drop as well with the addition of the pastel in. And then just use your spoon to help guide it around the oil, making sure that they don't connect to each other, they don't stick, etc. If you'd like to come and... So as you can see, they're starting to go golden already. You will need to continuously flip them around to make sure that the cooking process is even. And they will go very golden, and they will become extremely crispy. So this is what they look like after they've come out of the oil. A beautiful golden. There's a little bit of cheese that has leaked out, and it's become this beautiful crispy golden as well. But as you can see, it's just golden all over. Nice and puffed up. Good. Plenty of bubbles. The oil is now drained off. Okay, so at this point your kitchen's probably going to look a little bit messy because you're going to be doing 2 jobs at once, because we're in the process of filling the pastel. We also need to get the chicken out of the liquid. We need to pull that chicken. So, lid comes off. Just be careful when transferring across to the washing area. And then our chicken breast comes out. And what we want to do is we want to just use the tongs to shred that chicken up. Doesn't have to be perfect.
If you don't have tongs, you could use 2 forks to pull it.
Use forks. You can put some gloves on and do it with your fingers if you've got really good heat-sensitive fingers. So basically you just want to work at it for a couple of minutes with whatever device you're using until you have a beautiful shredded chicken breast. It should be nice and moist like this one is. It shouldn't require any effort other than the movement of the fork or the tongs or whatever to create this. This didn't require any force or effort from me, just literally the process of moving like this. There we go. We have a beautiful shredded chicken breast. So you want to just put that off to the side, and you want to let that cool down a little bit so you can get to the point where you can handle it. Now we're going to make the dough that this chicken breast gets added to. But before we do that, to allow it to come up to temperature a little bit, we're going to finish filling the pastel. We're going to cook them, and that job will be done. Okay, so now for the coxinha. Now that we've done the pastel, we need to continue the coxinha. So you want to get yourself a pot, relatively deep, doesn't matter what size, as long as it can handle a litre of chicken stock. So I know for a fact that this can. If you've got something bigger, great. If you've got something smaller that holds a litre of chicken stock, fantastic. Whatever one. Now, I've been a cheap ass and a lazy ass. I've purchased chicken stock. Haven't gone ahead and make it. If you've got some in your freezer that you've made, use that. If you want to purchase chicken style stock or, you know, whatever. If you just literally want to use stock cubes with a bit of water, go for that. So I'm going to empty this into the pot. Get out of there. There we go, that's that. We're all stocked up. Then I'm going to throw in some salt. Again, these are going to be chef bits of salt. I will give you obviously you guys know the exact measurements from the recipe, but I will obviously give you those as well. Hello, can I tap open? So it asks for 1 teaspoon of paprika. Again, I'm just going to go chefy. That's about a teaspoon of paprika. And then 2 tablespoons of butter, if I can get into the butter. And again, I'm going to be chefy here. Really can't get into this butter. There we go, finally managed to open the damn thing. Always clean as you go. So to me, that's about 2 tablespoons of butter. Again, please do follow the recipe for your guys' benefits. Everything that we need in the pot. We're taking the pot and we're going to be starting something, because you want to be starting something. You've got to be starting something. It's hard to get all the Well, that didn't sound great. Basically, you want to place that on a burner and you want to bring it up to the boil. That is the aim of that. Alright, so now we need to sift our flour for the dough that's currently on the stove. So, take the rest of my flour. As you can see here, I've got a bowl with a sieve and a scale. I'm going to turn the scale on. And I'm going to go for 500 grams of sifted flour. You may need to use a spoon to help it go through the sieve.
And make a bit of a mess while you're doing so.
Absolutely. What's cooking without mess? So obviously you can't read the scale whilst you're putting pressure on the scale. That would be, you know, common sense. So when I let go of this, then we'll know how many grams of flour we are at. So 150 grams so far. So we need to get to 500, so we've got a long way to go. It's a long way to the top.
If you want to make dough.
That brings us to 375 grams. I'm feeling very sifty.
Swifty?
No, shifty.
Swifty?
Thrifty?
Swifty.
Car and truck rental?
Rick and Morty reference.
Rick and Morty. This is, as you can see, a little bit of a tedious process, but wanted to make sure that everyone knows exactly what they have to do. So now we've got 375 grams of flour. We'll do our next.
Some for the bench.
There we go, 500 grams. Make sure that's beautifully sifted in as well. And the little bit of flour that's on the bench is not necessarily a problem, because we're going to have to flour and butter the bench for making the dough. So you can just leave that there. There we go. Sifted flour, 500 grams. As you can see. Okay, so now we're going to butter and flour our surface that we're going to be making this dough on. So I'm going to just cut off a very small bit of butter. The recipe will obviously state the exact amount for those of you who are following along, but again, I'm just going to be chefy, and then what I'm going to do is I'm going to use the temperature in my hands. I'm just going to smush it around on the surface. Might need a little bit more than that. And then onto that, we're going to add our flour. And basically, because the dough we're going to be making is quite wet, because it's almost a croquette or arancini style item that we are producing here, we need that surface area between it and the bench to avoid sticking and potentially losing product and all that. So as you can see, I've got a nice layer of butter now on the bench. Oh, there's a little bit more there, so I'll just use that as well, like so. And then simply on top of that, I'm going to sprinkle, it doesn't matter what flour it is really, even if you've only got a little bit of corn flour or whatever, this is just literally a pantry staple. Just dust the area, and then that is it. That is ready for us to put our dough on. Okay, so now as you can see, our liquid that we put on the stove to boil is now in fact boiling. So we're going to just drop the temperature a little bit to just bring that boil back down a little bit. Then we're going to come over here with a wooden spoon, put our bowl of sifted flour. So basically what we're going to do is we're going to add this sifted flour to that liquid. Now, you can go all in one go. However, to make your job easier, I recommend at least at the start, doing it a little bit gradually first. Just until you start to get an idea of what, because it's going to become progressively harder and harder and harder and stickier. So we need to, you know, like most Saturday nights, I guess, when it becomes harder and stickier. So I'm going to go in with about that much to start with. And now it is just literally a process of just mix, 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 mix. Try not to flick yourself with the hot liquid. And it will be hot and it will be steamy, and you will, so just be aware of that. And now we're just, literally this is the, and we just want to go until it passes the sticky stage and becomes a hard stage. You just want to peel it off of the sides and keep going and going and going and going. Don't be scared to play with your temperature if you feel like it's getting away from you. So this is getting quite difficult. And you want it, as I said, you want to go until it's no longer sticky. So it may take quite a bit of effort. My God, that is quite hard.
It smells good.
Smells fantastic, but it is very, very difficult. And you'll notice that as it gets harder, it peels away from the edge more and more and more. But you can still see that there's bits of flour in there that are not combined. So you just want to keep on going.
That's looking better.
So as you can see now, it's basically peeled away from the pot. And it is almost not sticky. So we're still going to have to work this on the surface that we made before. But you want to try and get as much of it combined as you possibly can in the pot.
It looks like a ball of dough now.
So as you can see now, it is definitely looking like dough. But we just need to keep going and going and going until it no longer sticks to the spoon as well. And you also want to make sure that you're cooking out the taste of the flour, because nothing worse than the taste of flour that hasn't been cooked out properly. If you don't go to the gym, you're going to have massive biceps by the end of this. It is one hell of a workout. You know, it's a difficult workout when even a chef is struggling to, somebody who uses spoons regularly is struggling. So as you can see, not sticky at all. Not sticking to my hands. I personally don't recommend you do that for too long because that is quite hot and you will burn yourself. But as you can see, no stick whatsoever. So I'm turning the heat off now. That gives you a general idea of what you're looking for with the dough. Yeah.
Nice.
Okay, so now I've upturned the dough onto that buttered and floured surface that we made. Basically, you want to just press it out nice and flat so that it starts to cool down. You can see the steam rising as I flatten it out more and more and more. And of course what that's doing as well is it's melting the butter that we put on the bench, and that's creating that surface between the dough and the bench. So the flatter you get it, the quicker it will cool down. But you obviously don't want to exceed your surface that you made with the butter and flour at the same time, because you'll have a really rough time trying to remove it. There we go, I'm pretty happy with that. Now, the next part we need to do is the Brazilian sofrito. So this is for the filling for the coxinha. Now, the recipe states for 2 onions. You can use brown onion, white onion, red onion, whatever you have access to. Spring onion, if that's your preference. When it comes to onions, my preference is leeks. So I've chosen to be a chefy prick again. I'm going to use leek. Please, if you are following along and you want to follow the recipe to a T, please follow it to a T. This is just me making personal preferences. I like the sweetness and the flavour that leek imparts when it's sautéed with garlic and all that. Yeah, so basically, I am going to, half of that, I'm going to make sure that there's no butter on my handle before I go and slice, because, well, at least there would be video evidence of how I lost my fingers. But I don't really want to do that today, so I'm just using my, so this tea towel is just my wipe things down tea towel, as long as it's not like raw meat or whatever, because that would be pretty screwed up. Now, if you are using leek, just make sure you check the inner parts for any dirt. And we good. So, and then I'm just going to slice it up. Now, if you're doing onions, best, like you can slice it however you want. Obviously, the bigger you slice it, the longer the sofrito and cooking down of the onions is going to take. The finer you slice it, the less time it's going to take. If you're good enough to do the cubes, where you run the knife down and then through, and then, or if you want to just run a knife over like that, once you slice the onion up, basically it's your prerogative on how you do this. Just obvious, and it also comes down to your knife skills as well. Everybody does this in their own personal way. This is just me giving you a few tips and tricks on how to make your life a bit easier. Obviously, when we are showing this recipe live, I will be able to stop for those who haven't been able to cut their onions so fine and do need that little bit of extra cooking time. So do not stress if you can't. And there we go, there's my leek. So I'm just going to pop that in this bowl. And that's probably about the equivalent of 2 normal sized brown onions that you would get from your local supermarket or greengrocer or whatever. If your onions are bigger, feel free to use 1. If you want extra onion, use 2 big onions. This recipe really is as much in your control as it is in my control. You can alter things to suit your taste or to suit your wants. As you've noticed, where I've been adding a little bit of extra salt, a little bit of extra this, not measuring that, etc. Because I know what my tongue likes. Okay, so now we're going to cook the onion and the garlic, or in my case, the leek and the garlic. So we're going to want a medium heat. So that, I would say that's about a medium heat on that particular burner. But if you feel like you would be happier cooking at a lower heat, please do cook at a lower heat. What we're going for here is translucent onion or whatever particular item you're using. If you are using spring onions, please cook at a lower heat because they cook extremely fast. Okay? So now, I'm going to come over here, I'm going to let that heat up for a little bit. I'm going to get my garlic together as well. Now, the recipe states for 3 garlic cloves. I already just have minced garlic in a jar, usually. So I'm just going to use that because it saves time, etc. Why can't I get the lid off? I can get the lid off. I really like garlic. 3 cloves of garlic would probably be about a tablespoon of that. I'm going to put 2 tablespoons. That's just personal preference. Again, if you are wanting to follow the recipe to a T, please do follow the recipe to a T. So I'm going to roll that onion. I'm going to roll that onion around the pan. I'm going to roll that oil around the pan. And then bang, in with my leeks. Now, it should just be, at this point, because we're not looking for serious colour, we're just looking for translucency, you should just hear a slight sizzle sound. You don't want to hear, you don't want to have oil and shit going everywhere and all that. You just want a nice background, and then I'm going to add my 2
shit tons of garlic. That's
exactly right.
Look at that! Look at that!
I want to keep the vampires away.
Holy shit!
And then I'll use a spatula for this. Again, whatever utensil you have to mix this around is perfectly acceptable. And then literally, as I said, we want to cook this at this medium heat, moving it around the pan until the onion goes translucent or the leek goes translucent, or you get a bit of colour on your spring onions or whatever you've elected to use. I must say, it is smelling fantastic in here right now.
Onion and garlic smells so good.
Making sure we keep those fucking vampires away as well with the amount of garlic that we're using.
I would like to apologise to your audience because my videoing skills are horrific.
So yeah, now we just want to let that cook nice and slowly. We'll come back to you when that's become translucent with the next step.
Just have a quick look. Looks friggin' good. Yeah.
So now, as you can see, the dough
is gross because you just fingered it.
But the point I'm trying to make is the dough is now
cold.
Not cold, but it is more than able to just have your hands there, no problem. And that's the benefit of spreading it out the way you have.
It also tastes really good because I just picked some off and tasted
so
it.
If you come over here,
it's really good. And this smells like heaven.
As you can see, the leek has started to become that translucent colour. There's a little bit of colour starting to form on it. We don't want to probably go any further with it. It smells bloody phenomenal, all this garlic and leek, I must say.
It really does.
So now we're going to drop the temperature right down. And at this point, the chicken that we ordered goes in. So shredded chicken,
yum,
in with it. And then straight away, before we mix anything, we want to throw in a tablespoon of paprika. Whether you have Hungarian, smoky, sweet, hot. Obviously, if you have hot paprika, probably don't add a tablespoon. It's going to be a little bit, unless you really like fire. I'm not going to measure this. I'm just going to... Okay, so that looks like a tablespoon of paprika in my chef mind. I haven't measured it. Now, we sort of mix that together.
Looks so good.
Once it's all sort of the red colour of paprika, then we're going to season with salt and pepper. Now, this part of the recipe is salt and pepper to taste. So if you're not sure of your taste, add less, and you can add more at a later point as you taste along the way. And tasting along the way is extremely important. I do know my tastes, so I'm going to season. So
he likes it as salty as the Dead Sea.
I don't quite like it that salty. So we're going to give a good crack of pepper because I like a good peppery kick. And we're going to give a good, decent pinch of salt.
Or a handful.
It's not a handful. Like so. And then we're just going to mix that again until it's combined. And there's no like scratchiness of the salt as it's all dissolved into the food. Whoops, we're losing some off the edge. I'm on the edge of glory. And there we go. That's your onion and garlic sofrito, or Brazilian sofrito, or whatever you want to call it. So that's a general idea of what it should look color-wise and texture-wise. Okay, so now that we've got that done, we have to remove from the heat, and this is where we add the parsley. So I've just got a lightly dried, already pre-cut parsley, because there was no parsley, fresh parsley in stock at the shops. Bang! 15 grams parsley straight in. Then we want to mix that together.
Obviously, fresh parsley's good.
Absolutely. If you can source fresh parsley, fantastic. If you source lightly dried parsley, awesome. If all you can get is dried parsley flakes like that, that's fine as well. They will all impart the general flavour of what you are looking for. So now that that is all mixed through, we just top that off to the side, and we're going to go back to our dough. Alright, so now that the dough is basically cold to the touch, we can now work it into a proper dough, because right now it doesn't look like a dough, really, does it? So you want to bring it together, you want to knead it until it looks like a dough. Shouldn't be too difficult, it comes together pretty easy. There'll still be a little bit of warmth in there, but that's okay. So you just want to go until you have a nice smooth dough that is together and doesn't want to come apart. So as you can see, that is a nice, smooth, combined dough. And that took me, all of 30 seconds to get to that point. Alright, so in the meantime, I've just popped my oil on. Don't have to worry too much about that. You can do that right now. You can save that for later. We're in no rush here. So, I'm going to take, just to make my life a bit easier, I'm going to take my mix. I'm going to put it into the bowl that I had the chicken shredded in. And this is just so I can add the cream cheese a little bit easier than trying to do it in a pan. You don't have to do it this way. If you've got a good, nice high-edge fry pan or a large fry pan that you use, feel free to do it in there. And to that, I'm going to add my 285 grams of softened cream cheese. Now, this is lactose-free cream cheese, just for me. Feel free to add whatever cream cheese that you have. And if it's not 100% soft, the good news is the residual heat from within the mix itself will help to soften and melt the cream cheese. And if it's a little bit stuck to your spatula, well, you're going to be using the spatula to mix it through, so it will come off with the residual heat. And then we are literally just going to do mix, mix, mix until it is all combined. And we'll come back to you when we have the correct consistency. Okay, so now we're going to assemble our coxinha. So I've popped a plate here to put the assembled coxinha on. So the first thing you want to do is you want to grab a golf ball-ish sized dough. So as you can see, and you want to roll it around in your hands until you get a nice ball shape. Like so, nice and smooth. Okay? Then you want to flatten it out. You want to have it slightly more indented in the middle in your hand, like so. Then you take a teaspoon of your mix and you pop it in. I might put a tiny bit more. And then just make sure it's nice in the middle. There we go. And then you literally want to fold to a TP style This part is a little bit fiddly, and it may take a little bit of time for you to get your first few correct. Don't worry, they're still going to taste freaking awesome. And it's not like this is for a restaurant, but that's sort of what you're looking for. This one might be a little bit on the bigger side, but it gives you a general idea of what you're looking for. Don't be scared to work the edges and work it up to the top to create the pinch at the top to give you that teardrop or tea bag sort of look. And that's what you're looking for. And it's simple as that. Place that on the plate, grab another golf ball piece, roll it up, flatten it out, put your teaspoon and a bit of filling in, put it on the plate. And you just do that until you have no more dough or no more filling left. Like the pastel dough, any leftover, you can wrap it up, you can freeze it, you can fridge it, you can use it at a different point, you can obviously make a completely different filling for it. For demonstration purposes, I've only done 2 so far, okay? Because I just want to show you guys the rest of the steps before I go back and do them on my own, basically. So, in one bowl, you want to put 1 egg. So I'm going to break that egg into the bowl, like so. Then, you want to take a fork or a whisk or whatever you want to use, and you want to whisk that egg. Remember, aggravated assault for beating eggs is a life imprisonment. Then, you want to add 500 ml of milk. I've gone for milkish oat just because I'm lactose intolerant and I don't like the flavour that lactose-free milk imparts. Use whatever milk you want. You are literally doing this to create a liquid. I'm just going to make sure I shake this up like the instructions say, because I've just opened it. Now you want your milk to be room temperature or as close to room temperature as you can possibly get. So if you're using a big bottle, I recommend decanting some into another utensil to allow you to let it come up without potentially spoiling the rest of your liquid. So anyway, it says 500 mils. This is a 1 litre bottle. I'm just going to go until I feel as if there's enough liquid. Right, I'm pretty happy with that. Then to that, I'm going to add some salt. Now again, this is salt to taste. The best piece of advice I can offer you is that if you haven't seasoned enough, you can season once you've cooked in oil. So I'm going to put a little bit of salt in here, like so. I'm going to mix it all together so that the egg and the milk combines. There we go. As you can see, there's no differentiating now between the milk and the egg. And then into this next bowl, I'm going to add breadcrumbs. I've chosen panko breadcrumbs just because I like the texture of a thicker breadcrumb. If you've got normal everyday breadcrumbs, fine. If you don't have breadcrumbs, if you've got bread in the freezer or some stale bread, literally put it in a blender, chop it up finely, whatever you want to do. As long as you can get sort of a bread texture on the outside, that's all you're looking for.
You can even toast a piece of fresh bread and then blend it.
Exactly. Toast a piece of fresh bread, blend it up, cut it up with a knife, whatever works for you. So to that, I'm also going to add some salt. And just for my personal preference and a bit of colorization, I'm adding a small dusting of paprika. You do not have to do that. The recipe does not state it. And then I'm going to take just any spoon, and it doesn't matter. You can even use your fingers for this. I'm just going to literally bring it together until it looks like the paprika has sort of slightly coloured the breadcrumbs. That's all I'm looking for. Now, at this point, you can go ahead and you can crumb all your coxinha, and you can decide not to cook them, and you can freeze them, and you can cook them at a later point, if you would like. You can also cook them, and then you can freeze them and cook them in the oven at a later point. It is purely up to you what you would like to do. As I said, I'm just doing 2 right now for demonstration purposes, and I'm sending breadcrumbs everywhere in the process because I'm not focusing on what I'm doing and I'm talking to you guys. So, thumbs up for the chef right there. Alright, so literally all we are doing is we are taking your coxinha. Now, you do want to have it as closed as you possibly can. However, if you do not have a perfect seal, you are about to place it in crumbs, which will create a seal. So basically, you want to use one hand for the wet, one hand for the dry, so that you don't end up with PVA glue on the end of your fingers. And you just want to coat it in the liquid, shake off any excess, drop it into the crumbs, and just make sure that it is nicely coated in the crumbs. If you feel like it's not coating the way you want, you can do a double crumbing method, where you can, now that it's crumbed, you can drop it back into the liquid, and then you can drop it back into the crumbs. You don't have to do that. Again, that is a personal preference. I will do one like this, and I will do one double crumb. And we will see if there is any difference in the result. Honestly, the only difference should be is that the exterior will be a little bit crummier. That's it. So shake off the excess. Now, spend time with your coxinha. Don't be afraid to make love to the outside. Get your fingers in there. Show it that, you know, it means a lot to you. So this one's going to be the one that we double crumb. So I'm going to roll it around in the liquid. Again, shake off any excess. Transfer back to the crumbs. And we're going to crumb again. It's always important that you crumb again and again and again.
Really? For fuck's sake.
It's the secret to a healthy relationship. There's plenty of crumbing.
Oh my god.
Right, so as you can see, not much difference between the two. But you can tell that one has more crumbs on the outside than the other. Now, if you've seasoned your crumbs as liberally as I have, you will notice that having a double crumb on the outside will impart, obviously, more flavour. Now, whether or not this needs more flavour is up for debate, honestly. But now, we just need to fry these. So I'll meet you over at the stove soon with the oil, and we'll fry them. So now it comes time to the frying part. Now, if you haven't put your oil on yet, that's not a problem. You don't need to worry about them sitting there whilst your oil comes up to temperature, etc. Don't stress about that. I did put my oil on. I've done the end of the wooden spoon test, how I showed you with the pastel. Now we're ready to fry. You don't want to go too high of a temperature. You just want small bubbles to surround the outside of the wooden spoon, because you need to cook these for 4 to 5 minutes. And you don't want the outside to go golden too quickly, and you don't want the inside to still be raw. You want a nice cooked style item. So, in my left hand is the single crumb, in my right hand is the double crumb. We're going to drop into the oil.
Gently.
Very, very gently. If you're not confident about putting your hand this close to hot oil, please use a slotted spoon, use tongs, whatever. Now, you will need to move this around unless you are using a deep fryer, in which case you shouldn't have an issue. So there we go. And what I'll do is I will just continuously roll this around so that the whole coxinha is cooked for the next 4 to 5 minutes. And then we will remove, we'll place on a plate with paper towel to soak up any excess oil. And again, the chef in me says a little bit of extra salt. This is the point where you should test your first one to see if the seasoning is correct. If it is, obviously, you don't season them once you come out of the oil. If you do, season them straight away as soon as you take them out of the oil, because the hot oil in the exterior will cause the salt to become part of the dough and provide a better seasoning. So we'll come back to you in about 4 to 5 minutes when these are ready to be removed.
They look bloody brilliant.
Alright, so the coxinha, as you can see, nice and golden brown on the outside now, so I'm going to remove with the slotted spoon. If you've got tongs. If you don't have any of those things, well, you're just going to have a little bit of excess oil that's being transferred across.
Look at that
Now,
crispness. Oh.
The double crumb, obviously slightly crispier on the outside. Again, that's just a personal preference. The recipe doesn't state that you need to double crumb, but I just thought I'd do one for people to have a look. And there you go. So that's your double crumb, that's your single crumb. Not much difference really, as you can see.